Today's question, is there such a thing as good debt or is it all bad? Ted's here to discuss it. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Okay, Ted, it is a question as old as time itself.
You're going to break into a Disney song?
I don't know if is that a Disney thing? I haven't watched a Disney movie in 30 years.
Beauty and the Beast, I think.
Ah, okay, there you go. I'm familiar with the story. Is there any good debt or is all debt bad? And of course, I addressed this question in my wonderful book, Straight Talk on Your Money, Chapter 11.
That's funny, Chapter 11.
Oh, it is, isn't that? Yeah, I never thought of that. Still available on Kindle, on Amazon. And my conclusion was that debt is a tool. It's neither good or bad. It only matters how you use it. So I guess this is a pretty short podcast. Thank you very much for listening.
Hey, I'm going to go do some work now.
Answered the question. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and all audio podcasting channels. But I wrote the book a few years ago, as you know, and the world has changed. There was a bunch of stuff that happened in 2020. Don't know if you remember that
There's
or
stuff
not.
happening right now throughout the world.
There you go. Don't know if you're a student of history or not, but a bunch of stuff happened. Back then, our collective credit card debt was around $80 billion. And I remember at the time you said, I think it's going to go up. Well, sure enough, it's well over $110 billion now.
Right. That's just my wife.
And that is an increase of a third in a few years. So that's a pretty big number.
Big. Yep.
House prices are a lot higher. So, of course, mortgage balances are a lot higher. Is that good? I don't know. We're going to talk about it. So let's start with the conventional wisdom, and then we'll discuss it. So the question is, what is good debt? What is bad debt? So tell me what the conventional wisdom is on good debt.
Well, so good debt is something that helps you build wealth. It improves your situation, your condition. For example, a mortgage, probably good debt. You can't afford to buy a house. Or if you have to wait till you save up to buy a house, you're never going to get into one. So mortgages are generally considered good debt as long as you don't overspend. Student loans, well, assuming you're studying something that's going to turn into a job or a career, good debt. Businesses, the only way you can get going for most people is to borrow the capital. As long as you're getting a return on the investment, it's probably good debt.
I believe when we started Hoyes, Michalos and Associates Inc. 26 years ago, we got a line of credit from the bank.
We did.
And because otherwise, how do you, and ours is not a capital intensive business,
correct?
But we had to buy computers and pay rent and all the rest of it. And so, yes, a loan was an important tool for us. Okay, so that's the conventional wisdom on good debt. So what is conventionally thought of as bad debt?
Well, so incurring debt that's not producing something that's going to increase your wealth or your well-being. So think of it like consumption. So you're using it to pay your bills to live as opposed to investing in the future. The worst example of all, payday loans.
Payday loans, baby!
Right? So you're short cash today, you borrow at absolutely insane interest rates, and then you've got to borrow again next week because when you get paid, you pay it off.
Yes, I think pretty much everyone would acknowledge that payday loans are probably bad debt. Credit cards, same thing, obviously high interest. So, okay, you talked about mortgages. What about a car loan? Is a car loan good debt or bad debt?
So the problem with cars is that they depreciate quickly. And for those of you who are thinking about electric cars, they depreciate even more quickly.
Do they? I did not know.
Because nobody has figured out what the longevity of the batteries are. And so they go down at an accelerated rate. It's quite it's something to see. But anyway, so the issue is, do you need the car so you can generate income, so you can generate work? Are you buying the right vehicle to match your specific needs? Or are you overbuying? Are you, you're getting something fancier than you need or more expensive to operate? So there's some nuance to this. Yeah,
so I can see that I want to get a job working at that place, and my shift starts at 6 a.m., and the bus service starts at 6 a.m., so there's no way I can get there at 6 a.m., so buying a car allows me to get that job.
Right.
Maybe I work in construction. I need a truck to haul stuff around. Okay, couldn't earn the income without it.
Yep. But the difference is, so you need a truck. So do you get a basic little truck, or do you drop $120,000 on something with all the bells and whistles? You probably don't need all the bells and whistles, particularly if you're doing construction, but it all depends.
What would be a bell or a whistle I could get on a $120,000 truck?
Well, you could have leather upholstery. You could have a little built-in fridge in the console in front of you. They're all wired now for the internet anyway. So, all that stuff is, I guess you think of that as standard, but there are lots of fancy bells and whistles. So you can get a basic pickup truck, $45,000, $50,000. If you can find one on the lot, The average pickup truck now is probably 90 to 110,000.
So the car I drive still has the CD player. Is that standard equipment?
The car
still,
you drive is how old now? 14 years?
2011. So that'd be about 14 years, I guess. So, I don't actually use the CD thing anymore, but I'm hoping it'll increase the value. So, okay, so I can see a bit of a theme coming here in that there are nuances to this. So, okay, a car loan can be good debt or bad debt if I pay too much, if I need the car, whatever. Is the same true of a mortgage then?
Certainly. I mean, you could certainly overborrow or overspend on a house. The trick is always to match your needs or your anticipated future needs to what your income will support. I mean, the common wisdom used to be that you always buy as much house as you could possibly afford. So you stretch yourself. I don't know that there's any value in that, but of course, real estate was always going up until it didn't.
And that's exactly the reason for that wisdom. It's like, well, okay, I mean, if the house prices are going to go up by 10% every year forever, then I max out as much as I can because next year that house is worth 10% more.
Well, and hopefully I've got a raise at work so the payment is more manageable next year. I mean, there's lots of logic to this. It's whether or not it's true.
Yeah, and with a mortgage, if I've got a 5-year amortization, well, not a 5-year amortization, if I got a fixed rate for 5 years, my payments aren't going to change for 5 years.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about my pay going up. That number is locked in.
Right.
And term and amortization, those were the numbers I was struggling with in my head. We'll do a separate show. Go on Google and look up what I'm talking about here. So it kind of made sense. The house is going to go up by 10% a year. My payments remain fixed at least for the next 5 years.
Right.
Licensed to print money. The problem is it works until it doesn't.
Yeah, you don't want to talk about pre-cons, do you?
No, that's a
separate show.
whole nother mess.
It's a series, probably.
Yes, and you and I have done a show on that already, and I think in September I will probably do another one because I think we got to talk more about that because it's become even more of a problem. But that's a classic example of, now a pre-con isn't really a mortgage because it doesn't exist yet when you buy it, but the thought process is, hey, it goes up in value, so what's the problem? And I think, if we can go on a tangent here, and I guess we can because it's our show.
Our show, we can do whatever we want. Sponsors aren't going to call in and yell at you.
No, we have no sponsors. Here we are on episode number 568 or whatever we're on. So isn't this, so the concept with the mortgage is I will grow into it. The house will go up. Is that not exactly what the government does too?
It is.
We'll run big deficits, but it's okay. The economy will expand and tax revenue will eventually catch up.
And that's been a basic economic theory for at least the left side of the world forever.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, and I'm pretty sure the right side of the world believes exactly the same thing.
Right. So the world doesn't care.
Yeah, it doesn't care. Let's just keep doing it. And there is some sense in that. I guess if the deficit is going up by 5% a year and GDP is going up by 7%, then yes, you can eventually outrun it. But GDP goes up by 2 or 3% a year, and the money supply increases by 7%, and we're all toast. So,
and they're out of office by the time it comes to haunt them anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yes, because they're on a 4-year cycle, and it takes a little while to go on. So yes, we'll skip over the whole pre-con discussion, but it's exactly the same concept. You're hoping to grow into it, and you never do. Now, okay, so when you were talking about good debt, bad debt, you talked about mortgages, you talked about car loans, and then you mentioned student loans.
Right.
So tell me how a student loan is either good debt or bad debt, depending on reality.
Well, so here's the frustrating thing about student loans. You get approved for the loan no matter what you're studying. And so, we may get some hate mail on this, but you get a 4-year degree in art history. And then the question is, when you get to your first job, would you like fries with that? As opposed to going into engineering or the sciences or maths or any things where there's likely to be a practical implication. I mean, so if you're amassing debt simply so that you can go to university and get a degree in something as opposed to having a focused goal at the end of the day, there's a pretty good chance that student loan debt is going to be what I would consider bad debt.
I watch a lot of YouTube videos on art history.
Do you?
There's guys who describe what the painting is, and you know what Caravaggio was trying to do.
And how much are they making?
Well, he probably makes a ton on YouTube,
right?
But that's one guy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what do you do as a job? I guess you got to get a job at a museum or something. I don't know how it was, but put your thing in the comments. Ted Michalos is his name. Michalos. So it's not the loan itself then that's the problem, whether we're talking about mortgage, car loan, or student loan. It's what are going to be the costs to repay the loan. Isn't that really what it comes down to?
What's the opportunity cost?
Yeah.
Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah. So if I get a job as a doctor or an engineer or something and I'm making, I don't know, a couple $100,000 a year, then even if I have a really big student loan, I'm probably still going to be okay.
Probably. You won't be happy about it because, if you're a doctor, you don't think you should have to pay for your education.
Right, of
but
course
that's
not.
a different conversation.
Yes. So, but if I get a job where I'm not making hardly any money at all, then I've got a huge problem. So,
well, and one of the solutions is, I'll just stay in school longer. So I'll get more student debt. I'll get a master's in something completely useless, and it just snowballs.
Yeah. What would happen if we eliminated government guaranteed student loans altogether?
Well, so presumably a significant portion of the population could no longer afford to go to school.
Right. And that's a bad thing because there are some smart people who can contribute to society and they need a bit of help. But I guess the counter argument would be, well, okay, if you're going to go to school and become an engineer and get a decent job, maybe there would be private lenders who would be willing to take on that risk, or at least partially so.
I mean, it might be a better argument to say that, okay, we're actually going to test you, and if you meet the criteria to go into a certain area of study, then your education is free.
Yeah.
Logic being that you're going to earn a higher income later, and we're going to tax that money out of you.
Well, that was the show Northern Exposure from 30 years ago. Was
that what it was?
Yes, the doctor. The doctor, got his education paid for, but the condition was you got to go to Alaska for 4 years,
right,
where they're underserved, and we do that kind of sort of a little bit in places like Northern Ontario or whatever. But yeah, maybe student loans should be, okay, here's how much you get in these different areas, and here's how much you get in these other areas. So
that would be one way of doing it.
The problem with that, of course, is what's going to be the big area 5 years from now?
Right.
I have no idea.
Yep. Well, and equally problematic. So the solution I suggested where you got to pass tests, there are some people that can't pass the test, but they really should be doing something because it's in there, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that patent clerk guy in the early 20th century?
Albert Einstein, I believe, was his name, who was good at some things and couldn't remember what his address was.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, so the point we're trying to make is the student loan can be a very good debt if you've got a plan going into it, though.
Think of a student loan as investment. You're investing in yourself. And the issue here is if you're not studying the right things, you're making a poor investment.
Mm-hmm. And it's your investment. The hard part is you're thinking about university when you're 17 years old,
right.
16 years old.
And it's a natural progression for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Finished high school, I'm going off to university, even though I don't know what I want to do.
Right. And how could you possibly at that age know? I mean, I did because I decided in grade 10 I was going to be an accountant because that's all I could do.
Right.
Didn't have a whole lot of options. And then you didn't go to university for a number of years after high school.
That's right. I got out of high school, managed some fast food franchises for a period of time. I got out of high school, managed the Consumers Distributing for 3 or 4 months, the Woolworths for 6 or 7 months, moved back, went to university for 2 semesters, and I had to sell my car to pay tuition the next semester or go get a job. I went and got a job.
There you go, of course.
I drove trucks for 4 years.
So you're like the brand killer because Woolworths, right. Consumer Distributing, none of those places.
That's right. Anybody hired me in those days, they're out of business.
Exactly. Doesn't happen anymore. So I think that's true of the accounting firms you and I used to work for in the past, but we won't get into that anymore either. So, okay. So the point is, yes, it makes sense if there is a goal in mind. It's really hard at the age of 17 to say, okay, I know that AI is going to be a big thing 6 years from now. So that's what
do I have to study to make money at that?
And who knows, but keeping your student loans as low as possible, obviously, is the strategy where possible. So, okay. So we talked about the purpose of the loan, and then I made the comment that it's really the carrying costs that are the big issue.
Right. Cash is always king.
Right. So, okay, I bought that expensive truck in your example, but I'm working in construction, making good money. So not a problem. I can carry it. So is it really the carrying costs then that are what you should use to determine whether the debt is good debt or bad debt?
Well, again, just because I can make a payment on something doesn't necessarily make it qualify as good or bad debt. I mean, if the carrying cost was our only metric, if I'm making tons of money, then it doesn't matter what I borrow money for, right?
Well, I guess
and that doesn't make a lot of sense.
But on a practical level, that's actually kind of true. I guess
you're making the decision. That's how you want to spend your money.
It's your money. So, well, and when we look at the current world right now, we got credit cards, 20, 24%, and that's pretty big numbers. And then you got your friends at the payday loan companies. And I believe it was January 1st of this year that in Ontario went down to $14 on 100.
Such a deal.
Yeah, which is still, if you're paying every 2 weeks, like 364%.
Right.
So that's a massive number. And all I'm doing is taking 14 and multiplying by 26 payments. That's where I'm getting that number from.
Right.
Mortgage payments, they're in the sort of 4 to 5% range now.
And historically, that's where they should be.
Yeah, depending on the term, shorter, longer, whatever, your credit and so on. The household debt to income ratio is around 173%. And that's, it's actually come down a tick over the last sort of 6 months to a year, but that's still a pretty big number.
Well, go refer them to our documentary.
Yeah, DEBTASIZED. We'll put a link in the show notes where we go through all this.
We've all been tricked into payments are okay. We don't necessarily have to have the money to buy stuff.
Exactly right. So let me quote from Statistics Canada. The ratio of household credit market debt as a proportion of household disposable income increased for the second consecutive quarter, Q1 2025, which is the most recent numbers we have as we're recording this show, ticking up to 173.9% in the first quarter as debt grew faster than income. Ooh, that sounds like a problem to me.
Right.
In other words, there was $1.74 in credit market debt for every dollar of household disposable income in the first quarter. Still well below the $1.79 we registered at the outset of 2024. Now, that's kind of a stupid metric, I guess, because you're comparing debt to disposable income. I mean, one's a balance sheet thing, one's an income statement thing.
Well, but it's an indication of if your debt burden is higher than your disposable income significantly, man, it's your ability to service the debt, right?
So should we be happy that the trend seems to be moving in the right direction? Or?
Well, you like to say, inflation's 5%, now it's down to 2%. Should we be celebrating? Well, everything's still going up.
Right. Yeah. So it's still bad. I think that's exactly right. And I guess it's the same question with mortgage rates then. So is 4% a good rate? Is that a good number?
Well, the problem now isn't necessarily the 4%. It's people got so used to paying 1.5% and 2%, and now they're renewing at 4% and 4.5%, and that the payment increase is dramatic.
Yeah, you're getting whacked when
it's a cash flow thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And okay, so let's I know we're halfway into the show here. Let's go to practical advice. I think the last couple of weeks we've been
going practical advice much earlier.
Right.
How'd that work out for us?
It's because I wanted to talk about the government, you see. So we had to go on a diversion. So okay. I want to give you a visual.
Okay.
So everybody close your eyes unless you're driving in your car and tell me if this makes sense or not. The traffic light, red, yellow, green. So when you think about debt, red would be like, payday loans, high rate credit cards. Yellow would be, okay, variable rate lines of credit, big box retail financing, buy now, pay later loans, that sort of thing. And then green would be, okay, things like, inexpensive mortgages, subsidized student loan, maybe 0% car financing. Is that a good way to think about whether I should be incurring the debt or not, or is that overly simplistic?
No, simple is good. You've got to deal with an image that everybody can relate to. So anybody that drives can probably relate to your traffic light. It may not work for everybody, but it's just
yellow means go fast in my world, so maybe it's not the best visual.
Green, go dogs go, right?
Yes,
red, stop dogs stop.
I did not know that. So
but there are always going to be people that interpret this differently too, right? In your example, the buy now, pay later loan. Well, there's no interest if you pay it off on time. If you don't, then there's a severe interest penalty.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
and exactly. That's the real dangerous one because, okay, I'm going to go and buy that thing for X number of dollars. I can pay $200 today, or I can pay $200 over 6 weeks. Why wouldn't I stretch it out over the 6 weeks?
As long as you remember to make the payments.
Right. And that's the problem. Or the where you fall into the trap is, well, I can spend $400 now then.
Right.
Because I only have to put a smaller amount up front. And that's where you get into trouble. Okay, this whole premise of this good debt, bad debt is really based on the assumption that, well, you can avoid debt completely.
Right.
You can completely avoid it, and therefore we can pontificate that debt is bad.
And there may have been a time when that was true. It certainly isn't anymore. I mean, again, let's go back to our documentary. You can't afford to buy a house in this world without debt. Most people can't afford to buy a car, even a used one, without some kind of debt. And if you're in business, unless you save a long period of time to build up the capital, the only way to get that injection at the beginning is to borrow.
Yeah. So in our society, and you're right, our DEBTASIZED documentary does go into this in quite a bit of detail. We live in a debt-based society.
Right.
That's what, money is created as debt. That's what it really is.
So it's not even cash-based. And that's an important distinction. When the world was based on cash transactions, well, okay, you didn't get something until you could pay for it. Now it's based on can I service the interest costs of borrowing to get that thing now?
Yeah, can I get someone to loan me the money?
Right. So a debt economy is significantly different than a cash economy.
Yeah, and money enters circulation when the bank gives you a loan. It's fractional reserve banking. They're not actually loaning someone else's dollars. They're loaning a multiple thereof. So the whole system is based on debt. So it's kind of hard to avoid it. So, okay, here is a 5-point borrowing litmus test.
Gotcha.
I don't even know what litmus means.
Is the paper going to turn red?
Yes, that's exactly what I hope you don't have
Is it a base or an asset?
Exactly.
I don't remember. That's what I remember.
That's all we remember. So this is what you can use to help you decide whether you should take on new debt. So I'm gonna throw these out there, and you just off the top of your head tell me whatever you think. So test number 1 is the APR, in other words, the interest rate.
Yep.
Annual percentage rate below my long-term investment return. So this would be the case where,
well, it's a simple example. So you're a small business person. You decide you need a skid steer to generate more income.
I don't know what that is.
Skid steer is a little 4-wheeled cart with the bobcat. You know what a bobcat is?
I do. I need one of those.
There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you get a skid steer, and the interest rate on the skid steer is 5%. Well, can you generate a significant or sufficient new income to justify the cost?
Yeah.
Like, is it going to give you a positive return on the investment?
Right. And if I can't do the job without that thing you said, it's almost a no-brainer.
Right.
But hopefully the job I get will generate at least the 5% interest so that I'm ahead.
But the difference is, at 5% it makes sense. At 10% it makes sense. At 20%, maybe it doesn't make sense anymore. So there's some subtleties to this that you got to pay attention to.
Yeah. So if I can finance the skid steer directly with the manufacturer or the retailer, they've probably got favorable interest rates.
Right.
If I have to get a payday loan to do it, probably not a good idea. So, so the interest rate matters. Number 2, does it improve an appreciating asset or future earning power? I guess that's kind of the same thing as what we just talked about.
It expands on that, but I mean, a mortgage is a perfect example of this in that you're presumably buying something that you hope is going to keep going up. And historically, that's happened, except for very recently. Mm-hmm. Wow, there's cycles.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. If you're going to be living in the house for 20 years, I don't think there's been a period in recent history where prices did not go up over a 20-year period.
Where this gets a little strange is, so you're kind of cocksure of yourself and you borrow $100,000 to buy stocks because I'm sure the stocks are going to go up over time. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Been there, done that.
Right.
Yeah. And if they're going to go down, I guess that's kind of back to point 1 too. Your long-term investment return, you get hammered.
And there's no cash flow coming out of that kind of investment. So you got to make sure, can you service the debt based on your existing cash flows, even though you're buying an appreciating asset?
Yeah, if you're buying stocks that pay a dividend, then I guess you're somewhat mitigating the risk. If you're buying a rental property that pays rent, I guess you're kind of mitigating some of the risk. So here's the third one on interest rates. Can I handle a higher interest rate? Because if it's a line of credit or a mortgage that's going to renew.
Anything that's variable or flexible, right? Yeah.
So this kind of stress test in your head is, well, what if the interest rate went up 2%? Would I still be able to afford it? If you can, I guess you got a bit of a cushion. Mm-hmm. What happens if my income drops?
Right.
Can I still pay it off?
Where's the money going to come from?
Where's the money going to come from? And we never think our income's going to drop.
Right.
But that's a key
Nobody
point.
ever expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Exactly right. Thank you, Monty. And then I guess the other one that we talk about a lot is what's the total interest cost in dollars, not just the monthly payment?
Right.
Because it's too easy to say, the car's $200 biweekly. I can easily afford that. Mm-hmm. But I'm paying for 8 years, which means I'm paying double the cost of the
Always
car.
Look at the total cost of borrowing.
Okay, so we've talked about the decision about whether or not to take on new debt. Let's talk about existing debt.
Okay.
So here's my action plan for existing debt. And again, this is practical advice. Everyone can do this right now. Number 1, pull your credit report. Mm-hmm. Do it right now.
So you're basically saying take an assessment of where you're at. The credit report's the easiest place to get a public listing of all of your commercial debts.
Right. And
banks, credit card companies,
there
whatever.
may be some stuff missing. Maybe that payday loan doesn't report or whatever. But anything that's got a high interest rate, 15% or above or whatever, that becomes like priority payoff. And then compare the interest to whatever is current.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I'm paying a higher interest rate on my mortgage, is there any ability to renew?
Right.
Probably not. And then what's the payoff timeline, which you can see right on your credit card statement.
Yep.
If it's going to take you 32 years, I'm thinking that's probably a problem. And then we've also got calculator tools on our website. You can go to hoys.com. I'll put a link in the show notes.
See, all of this is falling into you got to have a plan to deal with your debts.
Yes. So what if my plan is I got offered a balance transfer? So I get, no interest for the next 6 months.
And those are pretty common. So you get the thing in the mail that says, hey, transfer your debts to us. We'll give you an interest rate deal, and so save yourself some money. The risk that people get is they transfer the money over, and then they run up the old debts again.
Yeah, so it only makes sense if you're definitely going to cancel the old debt and not rack up the new one.
And 6 months from now, you've got a plan for dealing off this debt that's now interest-free for a little while, right?
Right. And so if you've got a 14% interest rate credit card, they give you the 0% balance transfer. Well, what happens if in 6 months the new interest rate is 22%?
Right.
They've got you hooked at that point. So got to be a little careful. We've already said that mortgages are generally considered good debt. So what's your overall advice on mortgages? Anything in particular?
Well, so the issue with mortgages is just your interest rate sensitivity. Like it's almost always been the good advice to get a variable rate mortgage because over time you're going to pay less. But if you can't deal with the flexibility, the fluctuations in the rate, then maybe that's not a great idea.
Yeah, and we don't know what rates are going to do tomorrow.
Right.
So the advantage of locking in is you know exactly what the rate is. And whether you should renew early or not, again, is a mathematical question.
Right.
Because when you renew early, you potentially are subject to penalties. Well, paying $1,000 penalty to save $500 doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So this is an area where you probably need to talk to an expert, a mortgage professional, do some actual thinking. You don't want to listen to us. I guess my point there is don't just make the obvious answer. Oh, okay, mortgage rates have come down a little bit.
Time to renew.
Time to renew. Well, no, you're 2 years into a 5-year deal. It may not be as simple as that.
Do the math.
Okay, so final question for you then. Is there any advice you have with respect to the whole debt thing, good, bad, whatever?
Well, so there's 3 kinds of debt. There's the debt you know you're going to incur in the future. There's the debt you've got right now, the debt you've already incurred in the past. So try to reduce or eliminate the debt you need to incur in the future. So if you never have the debt, then you don't have to worry about dealing with it. The debt that you have now, well, you've talked about it earlier. Prioritize, get rid of the most expensive stuff first. Try to make sure that it's manageable. The debt you've got from the past, how you handled your old debts affects how much it costs you to borrow for all this stuff going forward. So you just need to look at each one of these things one piece at a time and deal with it. If you're in great shape financially or good shape financially, then you don't need to worry about this as much as the folks that, well, the debts in the past, it's a problem that they don't know how to deal with. And I guess maybe I'm rolling into a commercial for us then.
There you go. There's a commercial for us. Well, which is that if you have more debt than you can handle, then obviously we suggest you reach out to a licensed insolvency trustee. We're kind of, Hoys, Michalos and Associates would be the one we'd recommend. You can go to hoys.com and read all about it. Because as we always say, debt problems don't go away on their own.
They don't. And
the best debt is the debt you never incur in the first place. That was kind of your first point.
Yep.
That if you can do that, then okay, you've solved a lot of your problems.
Well, and you know how you do that? So open up your purse or your wallet, 1 or 2 credit cards. If you've got 7 or 8, then you're just running the risk that you're going to run them all up.
Mm-hmm. You got to be careful. And we get it. It's tough. You can't buy a house or a car without incurring debt unless you got rich parents or you've managed to save for 10 years. Right. So you're going to have to incur it. You just got to be very judicious about it, and you got to say, how am I going to repay it? Mm-hmm. If I lose my income, if the interest rate goes up, if anything changes, am I still going to be able to do it? If you can, okay, then I guess for you it's good debt,
right? Because
the benefits will outweigh the cost. Otherwise, you got to be very, very careful.
Makes sense.
So there you go. My advice would be think about it. That's my advice. Don't rush into any borrowing decisions. Crunch the numbers. Make sure you can afford the payments, even if your income drops. And if you're borrowing to invest, which you touched on, you got to be very, very careful.
So it's gambling.
Because it's certainly speculating. That's for sure. Make sure you're as smart as you think you are. So
now we can do that pre-con show again.
There you go. That's and again, it made perfect sense at the time and didn't make as much sense at the end. So there you go. As I said, if you got more debt than you can handle, you can check us out at hoys.com for full details. that is our show for today. I don't know if we actually concluded anything or not, but
good debt, bad debt. Your original premise was correct. Debt is a tool. If you use it properly, it's good debt. If you use it improperly, it's bad debt.
So now people are upset that they watched the whole 30-minute show to
Right.
just get the same thing that I said right at the beginning. But it's true. I think that's exactly right. So there you go. That is our show for today. Please like and subscribe. Hit the notification. You know the whole routine. Thanks for listening and watching. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.